I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design. Today, we're speaking with Laura Tribbett of Outline Interiors. I have long held the belief that design is a right, not a privilege. It might sound silly, you might disagree, but let me explain why. And after you hear my conversation with Laura, you might be on board. Good design is a right, not a privilege. Good design affects all of us, makes communities stronger, and it makes for a well-lived life. I think many, if not most people, have no idea what good design is because most people are so heavily influenced by social media. And because social media, actually media in general, is so heavily influenced by likes, loves, and emojis of those who don't possess an educational background nor experience nor expertise on the subject. Anyone can look at an image on Instagram and love it enough to post a fire emoji, right? Nothing wrong with that. But let's not confuse that with an understanding of how that design might function, or how it works with other spaces in the dwelling, or how those who live there will use the space, how it'll affect their lives. It's just a picture. They like it. Fine. But it's really interesting how when enough people like something, it influences others to believe that it's exceptional. It might be, but there's nothing in the posting of an image to support that. Same with an article. You know, you'll get images, you'll get 500 words, but it doesn't explain how and why. Sometimes this leads to fame for wildly popular designers, regardless of whether or not their designs are good. And the measurement for that is how the client is affected by that work. There's a quote from Arthur Conan Doyle and his tome, The Hounds of the Baskervilles, in which Sherlock Holmes says, quote, "I know what's good when I see it," end quote. In this particular case, Holmes is reacting to a portrait, purely subjective. At the same time, what separates good design from bad? Really, what separates it? I would say that when you have a trained professional doing what they've been trained to do on your behalf and influenced by your desires, the results have a good chance of hitting the mark. If hitting the mark equals good design, isn't that the best definition? And isn't that the best process? Why am I telling you this? Because smart, well-trained, and talented designers understand their roles and can see beyond first-level obstacles. Laura Tribbett talks about infusing, quote, "moments of joy," end quote, into every project. And that is one of the reasons I enjoy her work as much as I do and enjoyed our chat as much as I did. And it's also why I think you're going to love it. And you can hear all about it right after this. I am just incredibly proud of this partnership I've got with Thermosol. They have been presenting partners of Convo by Design going on 5 years now. And there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide, full stop. And it's for a few reasons. First of all, they were the first company to design and patent the technology here in the United States, dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a US-based manufacturer based in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody that I know of. I have the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and if you're in the business, you know this, that the idea of luxury has changed, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered a luxury. And if you want to add steam, you have only one true option, my opinion, and that's Thermosol. Mitch Altman, third generation CEO of this family owned company of 65 years, continues to innovate in the bathroom and shower space through technological marvels such as intelligent showering systems, sound therapy, aromatherapy, technical interfaces, and so much more. And now Thermosol, the industry leader in steam bath equipment and technology since 1958, as I mentioned, is enhancing its already stellar family of products with the new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas available in 3 designs. The configurations are absolutely amazing, and you should probably go check them out. Indoor and outdoor options. It's amazing. You really do need to check them out. Go to thermosol.com or at Thermosol on the socials. You talk to your clients, you do your onboarding, you do all of the prep work that you need to get the project, but you can paralyze yourself creatively if you overthink it.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I mean, with clients, you want to have an agenda. You want to have a loose outline of what the goal is for that conversation, but they could say something or they could choose something creatively that's going to take the whole conversation in a different direction. And if you're not able to kind of flex with that and kind of go with the flow and like still have in the back of your mind, okay, this is like my ultimate goal, and we're going to get there in just kind of this different circumvented way, then you're kind of in trouble, I think.
No question. No question at all. It's interesting. So, and we'll get to all that stuff in a minute too, but so you're a horned frog.
I am a horned frog. Are you?
I am not. I am a cougar, not a Houston cougar. I'm a Washington State cougar, but
Okay.
lived in Dallas for 9 years.
Okay.
Loved living in Dallas. And it's funny
Yeah.
because if you're on the Dallas side of the Metroplex, it's Dallas Fort Worth. If you're on the Fort Worth side of the Metroplex, it's Fort Worth, Dallas.
Right.
Which is really, what strikes me and what I'm so curious about is here you are studying interior design in Fort Worth, which has a very traditional, I mean, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
But it's got a very traditional background. And going to school at TCU, what an amazing experience that must be. What was it like learning about interior design in the state of Texas?
You know, I feel like the world was different then. TCU was very much a bubble when I was there. I was there 2002 to 2006, and I'm from Minnesota. So that was already a, culture shock, maybe. A lot of my friends would, say, oh, say this word. What do you call this? And they would hold up a can of Coke and I'd say pop, and they would laugh, or, they would say, we're going to go get Mexican food. I'm like, oh, great. I love Mexican food. And they'd say, have you ever had Mexican food? I'm like, yes, you guys, we have Mexican food and Mexican people in Minnesota. So that was its own kind of hurdle, I guess, was, educating my new friends about the Great White North. I chose TCU because I wanted to go to a small school. And it had, I think at that time, it had about 6,000 undergrad. I could have gone to the University of Minnesota, Madison, Purdue, whatever. I didn't want to go to a school with 50,000 people. I wanted to go to a bubble, and TCU was very much a bubble. So I guess in terms of learning about design in Texas, I didn't really have anything to base it off of. And Fort Worth, despite it being, I guess, maybe the more traditional of the two between Dallas and Fort Worth, you still have a lot of really great museums right there that a lot of people forget about. You have the Modern, which was designed by Tadao Ando. You have the Kimball, which I believe is Louis Kahn. You have the Amon Carter. So like, I was really lucky. I got to take an art history class one semester at the Modern. We went every single week. We went there. We were studying, I think the artist was Anselm Kiefer. And then we would sit and watch a lecture. So there were a lot of resources there that people might not think about when you think about a traditional like Texas undergraduate experience.
And it's fun too, because
Oh, so fun.
you have everything from Bass Performance Hall to the stockyards.
Oh yeah, there's like and again, I mean, maybe I'm just gonna typecast myself, but also really good Tex-Mex, like really good food, really good resources. Downtown Fort Worth is adorable. It's changed a lot since I've been there. I went a couple years ago for a football game, and that was like, oh, what happened to this place? Like it was just so much more developed, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's happening everywhere. But where I was going, and what I think is so interesting, is I think we've all kind of gone through phases where it was like we're in the pandemic, this is never going to end. Then it's over, and there was this entertainment and travel explosion, and
Mhm.
now everyone has gone through a phase where it's like I don't want to talk about the pandemic anymore.
Yeah.
But I feel like, and this has been a recent thing for me, because when I get to talk to people like you, I'm
Mhm.
reminded every week that there's so much more, it's so much more enriching. I don't know, for me, and I think for many that I speak with, when I was living in Dallas, two tours of Dallas, one for 6 years, one for three.
Okay.
I was in broadcast radio at the time,
Mhm.
and it was so amazing for me. For one segment of it, I was a music rep for a radio station called The Edge,
Yeah.
and every Thursday night I was at a club night in Deep Ellum, and then every now and then
Uh-huh.
I'd go to a show, in Fort Worth.
Mhm.
What's really interesting, and I think most people don't realize, is the U.S. is not one country. It's really not.
No.
And people from Europe, like I've talked to folks from Europe who say, the U.S. is just so big, and it's not one country. It's 50 different countries, and then within that you have different subsets. For you, as an interior designer, studying in Fort Worth, which gives you sort of this one set of references, but being from the North and now
Right.
working in Chicago, which is a completely different social experience.
Yeah.
How does that experience make its way into your work?
Well, one stop I think you missed on my, I guess, tour is New York.
I was
So
gonna I
after
was gonna
college,
I was gonna get to that next,
yeah,
because, and sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. I'm gonna get to that
that's
next
okay.
because I the journey that you took working in shops, working in studios of some very well recognized and well renowned creatives is interesting, and I definitely want to go there. I kind of feel though the form for a designer who chooses, and not every designer chooses to go to college to get their interior design degree,
Right,
right?
right.
But for those that do, I think it's transformative based on where they are at the time. And being in Chicago with this Midwest mindset and a certain style unto itself,
Mhm.
I'm just curious how Texas informed your design, because it's very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say that, maybe I don't wish I could say this. I honestly don't feel like everything I learned about interior design I learned in school.
Mm,
I think TCU was a great education and a great platform in terms of technical skills, drafting, rendering, principles of design and things like that. But even within our program, which was very small at the time, it was maybe 12 students. We all had our own individual flair. A lot of people went into healthcare or hospitality. Dallas has a lot of really big hospitality firms based there. I knew I wanted to go into residential of some sort, maybe even children's design at the time. I was really into that. Um, but I don't necessarily attribute like my current style necessarily to having studied in Texas. I think it was just like a great platform. And then having the professional experiences that I had in New York and then Chicago have really kind of helped me form my own personal design aesthetic. Um, but I guess in terms of like sensibility, being from the Midwest and being from like a straight up like middle class family, my parents were both, teachers growing up. Um, that's a different mindset than maybe a lot of people have. Um, when I approach things and maybe how I relate to people, whether that's clients or whether that's vendors or some of our subs. So I think that's important. I actually just landed a really big project here, and the client said, she was like, I like your attitude. I like your attitude that not every single piece in my home has to be $1 zillion or has to be top of the line, top of the budget, you know. She's anticipating grandchildren. She's anticipating lots of family being over, and she wants to be practical in the areas where she can so that we can save and splurge in the areas where we really want to kind of showcase something unique.
And I asked the question because I'm fascinated by it, and I'll tell you the story behind it. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I went to Design Chicago
Yeah,
and
it's great.
in the mart and had a
Mhm.
chance. So you know when you walk in, that it's not an atrium, but you have that those seating, which are the stairs, and then
Yep,
then you have the landing up to the left. So I
yep.
had that whole
Mhm.
little landing area, and I was recording for a couple of days, and I got a chance to talk to so many Midwest designers. So
Mhm.
Chicago,
Yeah.
Kansas City, St. Louis,
Mhm.
Minnesota, sort of in that
Yeah.
area. And after so many years of in LA prior to the pandemic, I've been doing this show since 2013. So I've been doing it a
Yeah.
while. And prior to the pandemic, I only did maybe a handful of conversations via Skype. Everything else was in person. So whether it was an event and I had people coming in from New York to an LA event, then we could sit down and
Right.
talk. But I never had a chance to really sit down with Midwest designers. There is a there's a different experience, a different feel, a different vibe to Midwest designers. Midwest designers don't traditionally put themselves out there to be in magazines. You guys don't necessarily submit your work for coverage. You don't gather accolades, for lack of a better. There's this Midwest mindset that's
Mhm.
more work focused, but having this experience down south in Texas, where Texas is a
Oh, it's
look at me state.
yeah, TCU is a very flashy. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a vibe. Yeah.
it is. And I think I was surprised. Am I totally off base here with the Midwest mindset? Like I was surprised, especially doing interviews and people kind of being very humble and not throwing out the good stuff, just talking about that. I just try to make my clients happy. It's like, no, I get it. Every good interior
Yeah.
designer tries to make their
Yeah.
clients happy. How do you do it? Do you feel that same way? Is that a Chicago thing? Is that a Midwest thing? Or did I just totally imprint that on it?
Um, I mean, I think there is maybe more of a focus in the Midwest about that balance of client experience that you might not get in a New York or an LA market. At least when I was in New York, uh, being on the designer side, of course, being on the studio side, the client experience wasn't really a focus. Being in Chicago, I worked for a firm before I started my own, and it wasn't really a focus there either. Once I started my own, I was like, okay, well, I still want to like cultivate this relationship. And I think a lot of my colleagues and peers in this market share that, but I think it is changing. I think you are seeing a lot more talent emerging from Chicago, getting, wide national recognition. You have Kara Mann, you have Summer Thornton. Um, a lot of those designers are putting themselves out there, and we're putting ourselves out there. We've been in the Wall Street Journal. We've been in on the cover of HGTV magazine, my own home, which is pretty cool. So I don't know. I think maybe the Midwest gets a little overlooked because there's so much talent in some of those bigger metropolitan areas, New York, LA, Miami, whatever it may be, Dallas. But I think there's a lot of talent here, and I think people are starting to kind of start to recognize that.
Yeah, no question. So after college, then you go to New York. and you work for a couple of different firms. It's really interesting to me too, because there are a number of ways that someone can become a designer,
Right,
or if you're not an interior designer, a decorator.
right.
Alex Papakristis, a conversation with him, it was kind of weird because I'm not a designer. I didn't go to design school, but for him to say, I'm not a designer, I'm a decorator, it's like, oh, okay. I get that. But why? Because an interior
Mhm.
designer is someone who earned a degree and is certified as a interior designer. Totally get it.
Right, right.
But it doesn't necessarily reflect talent. And there's a number of ways to become an interior designer or a decorator. You can go off and do your own thing. In your
Yeah.
case, you did the education route. And
Mhm.
then instead of just going out and hanging a shingle right after that, you also worked for a couple of other firms, not just one firm, but a couple. And I really like that because you got a chance to learn what you liked, learn what you didn't
Mhm.
like, and
Mhm.
kind of put yourself together as far as
Yeah.
what you wanted your own firm to be. When did you know, and what did you learn from each of your stops that informed the firm that you have become?
Yeah. Um, I mean, so when I was in New York, I worked at, oh my gosh, how many different places?
Tom
Oh,
Felicia.
okay, so I gotta go in order. Well, I started at the McGuire showroom.
Okay.
I said I interned in New York the summer between junior and senior year of college for this Upper East Side, Madison Avenue children's design boutique. And I mean, I could write a book about it. It was crazy. Um, that wasn't a fit for me, but I said, you know what, I love New York. I'm gonna be here next year as soon as I graduate. So I knew I wanted to be in New York. Did I know if I wanted to do, I didn't know where I wanted to be. And it's hard to get your foot in the door if you don't live there, you know? So I said, I'm just gonna cast a wide net. So I got a job at the McGuire furniture showroom at the New York Design Center. I worked customer service. I was there for 7 months. And while I was there, I was kind of, looking into other jobs. And then I landed my first design job at William Georges Architect, as a junior designer, design assistant, whatever they called it. Um, and I was there for about a year. Then I went to David Easton's office. I was there for almost 3 years. That was probably the most formative of all of my experience and the most positive. After David's office, I went to Tom Felicia. After Tom's office, I went to work with Sean Henderson. And my last role was at Thomas Yule Hansen. He's a Danish architect. And he was looking to kind of build up his interior side. So he brought me in to kind of start that, side of the business, which was really great. So I guess, I mean, what did I learn from each of them? What formed at Bill's office, William Georges? I mean, that was like being thrown right into it, which was kind of wild. And I say that just in terms of like intensity, but like, I mean, his clients are like the top 1%. We're talking about like, I'm not gonna say names, but we're talking like real estate moguls and people who collect dinosaurs and Damien Hirsts and, crazy stuff. So I saw Central Park from all angles. I saw 200, I worked on the design of silk rugs that cost $200,000, crazy, crazy stuff. We upholstered the walls in silk velvet, but I got exposed to this level of artisans that very few decorators get to work with. And being in New York, I mean, they're there. So that was pretty cool. So I think from there, I took away this sense of like ornamentation. His use of ornamentation and kind of maximalism is really impressive. David's office, David's office was fun. His working at his office is like a fraternity or a sorority. Like once you're there, once you leave, like you're in this like clique. And the way that his office was structured, I was there during the 2009 kind of downturn of the economy. So when I started, it was like 50 people and there was a hospitality department and a big architecture, area. And then by the time I left, maybe in 2010, it had shrunk considerably. But what was interesting is that in the interiors department, we had different teams. So each team had a senior designer, a junior designer, and a project coordinator. So the senior designer was like the face of the project to the client. They were not necessarily drafting, and this is where that term decorator might come in. Some of them didn't necessarily have design degrees, but they had such a way with clients and they had such an eye and they could schmooze the vendors and, they could still lead a team. The junior designer was really there to do a lot of the drawings, a lot of the sourcing, and then the coordinator was there to just kind of make it happen, schedule deliveries, place orders, make proposals. So what I learned at his office was really kind of like the necessity of a team and like how to kind of delegate each person does what. After that, I was at Tom Felicia's office, and that was a fun office, but it was chaos at times. We had a lot of overlapping installs, but I did learn to work fast. I really learned to work at a different price point at Tom's office. David's office was also very much that top 1% clients. I mean, we did like a $45 million sailboat that was built in Amsterdam. So just really kind of crazy things. At Tom's office, we got to learn how to design and decorate for really, really nice luxury projects, but maybe at a more like reasonable reality-based level and on a quick timeline. I remember some of my David Eason colleagues were like, that's so cool. You get to learn how to do this like so fast, because Tom, kind of likes that drama. He likes the drama of the reveal and, it was a production. And not in a bad way. It was just a different pace of working. And I probably work more at that pace now, honestly, than at some of the other paces that I've worked at. So I think that was a really valuable skill. Let's see, what is Sean's office? Sean has a quieter aesthetic. It's a little, it's more modern. It's really sophisticated. So I was exposed to a lot of different play on textures and different colors. He was fun to work for. He's a really nice guy, really talented. And then at Thomas's office, I really got to kind of spread my wings, which was cool. It was basically like working for myself, but under the safety and the umbrella of Thomas and all the infrastructure that he had, because he really trusted me. He didn't want to deal with the interior design. He's like, that's not my thing. I do the architecture. I have this whole team of architects. You guys do the interior design. And so it was like running my own firm, like in a mini way, but without the worry of, do I have to find clients? Do I have to make sure I have enough projects to pay the bills and things like that? I didn't have to do that. I just had to focus on doing my job and managing the clients and doing beautiful design work.
You are listening to my conversation with Laura Tribbett of Outline Interiors. We'll be right back.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
As a busy professional designer, you know how important it is to find the right partnerships. Partnerships that allow you to specify the right products for every project. Professionals like you don't just have time to sit around and waste, right? So let me tell you about one of my partnerships. Pacific Sales is here to serve you with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for all your projects. Non-commissioned. That means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that, with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. And you will find all your favorite brands, like Monogram, and their commitment to providing exceptional products, starting with materials. Monogram sources commercial-grade stainless steel on their refrigerators, unscratchable sapphire glass on their cooktop knobs, durable marine-grade bearings on their dishwasher racks. Monogram takes inspiration from the leading-edge materials used in the high-end automotive and aeronautics industry to provide you with lasting beauty and exceptional quality. The beauty is backed by the same level of attention to performance, which is why Monogram appliances are trusted and sought after by chefs all over the country. Chain-driven French oven doors that can be opened with one hand, and an industry-exclusive hearth oven that allows for all-electric indoor brick oven-style cooking without the need for external ventilation. These are just a few of the things that make Monogram so special. Pacific Sales features Monogram appliances, and Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team is here to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. And here's the cherry on top: access. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands like Monogram. Visit a Pacific Sales showroom today to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, where excellence meets expertise. What an interesting journey. What a fun and interesting journey through learning what it is you want to do. It's interesting because in having these conversations, there's nothing getting the degree, like my degree is in social science. Okay, what does that mean? I still couldn't tell you what that means, but it's the process of going through school and taking and doing a capstone project and going through the basics to reinforce and to learn how to manage your work. But when it comes to an interior design degree, I have heard from so many people that, and I believe this, that it is so drafting heavy and art history heavy that you don't get the skill set that you really need to be a functional, successful working interior designer. Why do you think that is?
I think some of it you just kind of have to learn on the job. Honestly, you need to know all those basic things that you just mentioned. You need to know how to draft. You need to know the history of things. But how do you teach like problem resolution? Like how do you teach that? How do you teach critical thinking? Outside of practice, I guess.
Can I challenge you on something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you really need drafting? Do you really need, especially now? And do you really need art history?
It depends on what type of design you want to do, right? I mean, do you want to be able to speak intelligently about the type of art or the type of antiques that you're mixing into an interior and kind of understand like the provenance and the history of them? Maybe. If that's not your thing, then maybe you don't need it. In terms of whether you need to draft or not, I mean, when I started out, it was just me. And so, I needed to know how to draft, and I did. And I still do know how to draft. Am I the person doing it day in and day out? No. Now that I have a bigger team, we've kind of delegated different tasks onto different people. I mean, I don't know. We could go down a whole rabbit hole about AI and how that's kind of transforming the design industry. At the end of the day, though, I mean, aside from drafting, you do need to know scale and proportion. And for me, drafting is a tool. How does this sofa look in this space? Is it going to fit properly? Is it going to feel too big? Is it going to overpower other forms in the room? So I don't know. Maybe I'm old school, but I think drafting is important. And if you can't draft, you certainly need to know how to scale things and understand.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm suggesting, and by the way, what I think is amazing, I can only imagine how your skill set, how your talent and abilities developed going from one interior design firm to the next, learning the differences, and then going to an architecture firm, because that, I think, especially one with Scandinavian roots. No, I mean, it
was intimidating. It was intimidating.
I would imagine it is, because you want to talk about simplicity and scale.
Yeah.
It exposes you if you don't understand those things. So I totally get it. I think, and it's not a complaint. I just think it's interesting that, if I think design school should teach designers how to do an interview.
Oh,
I
yeah.
I think design school should teach designers how to tell a story. Architecture is a language. I feel like design
Yeah.
is the dialect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're telling a story, I talk to so many designers who will tell me, I came out of school, I got my degree, and I knew how to do this, this, and this, but I didn't know how to tell the story. And I feel like nowadays, when you're dealing with the 1%,
Mhm.
I don't want to say it's not design because it absolutely is. But there's a difference between an unlimited budget and a huge amount of space
Right.
and a smaller budget and less space. Small
Right.
spaces, big style, lower budgets. I'm a huge fan of the democratization of design. I think design is a right, not a privilege. I think design makes the lives, I'm not going to get too preachy here, but I feel like design makes the lives of those for whom you work better.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's experiential. And when I look at your work, I get that feeling. Yes, I absolutely see scale and proportion and materiality. And I want to talk a little bit about that. But I also feel like, to your point about working with more clients with lower budgets, I feel like that's got to be more fun.
You know, I feel like I have one of my gifts is being able to relate to a wide array of people. And I kind of attribute that to my time in New York, because when you're, you know, a 25-year-old from the Midwest who's making small talk with, hedge fund CEOs and their family, like you're like, what? How is this working? I feel like I'm able to find common ground with most anybody, and find joy in that. But I think where I'm at now, working with families and clients that are based mostly in Chicago. I mean, we work elsewhere, but we are able to make those connections. And I think that connection then translate through to the design, because it's not just, oh, we're choosing that wallpaper. It's like, oh, well, we know the client really likes palm leaves because they love to travel and they go to the Caribbean a lot, or, whatever it is. Like, we're able to create those connections. We have this little phrase in our office, we call it mojo. It stands for moments of joy for others. And that's really important to us. It sounds cheesy, but it's kind of one of our like mantras, this industry is hard. This is a hard job. It's not just, it's probably 5% creative and then 95% making it happen, dealing with delays and production issues, just wrangling wrangling the people, making it happen is a big thing. And so it can be draining at times. And if you're not looking for and really actively seeking out to create that joy for yourself as a designer or your colleagues or your client, it's not worth it.
Listen, I totally agree with that. And the reason I feel like design is a right, not a privilege, is because I think that if we've learned anything over the last 3-4 years, it's that experience matters,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
don't realize it until it's taken away from you.
Uh-huh.
And it's really interesting because when you look at housing stock in the US,
Mm-hmm.
and I would call it new and immature. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
You look back at the Sears catalog, which coined the master suite, right?
Right.
Which is this idea of a premier suite within a home.
Mm-hmm.
It was an idea. It was an advertising tool. It was a concept that
Right.
wasn't really fleshed out and developed.
Yeah.
And then you have this Neutra inspired open concept from a mid-century modern perspective, from a modern to mid-century modern perspective.
Yep.
And we don't really test our design. Do you know what I mean? Our design
Yeah.
is never really tested. And
Yeah.
I think if we had a forced test like we did a few years ago, I would say it kind of failed. It kind of failed. But it also created an opportunity. How
Yeah.
did that opportunity change the way that you feel about the work and that you think about design?
I mean, I agree. I think design is for everybody. Which is why when I first started in 2015 on my own, I would be, those $1 million projects don't fall from the sky, right? I mean, at least for me, they didn't. It would be nice if they did, but they don't. So it's like, who was I working with? I was working with other people that were my peers. Some of them were my friends, friends or family or whoever. But I was working with a lot of young professionals in their early 30s. They'd maybe bought their first condo, their first home, and in their words, they didn't want to screw it up because this was their first big girl investment, big boy investment. So we're working with them. They want the experience of working with the designer. Do they have the budget for everything custom, everything from the merchandise mart? No. So we're creating a fun experience for them. We're creating a beautiful design. Is it, at that point, was it maybe consisting of higher retail items, maybe some things from, Wayfair or whatever? Yeah. But they were proud of that. They were proud of that finished product. And those people have grown professionally. They've grown in their families. And then when, the pandemic hit, a lot of those people were like, I'm out of the city. I'm moving to the burbs. We're buying that big house. We got that promotion and I'm coming along with them, and, just to kind of like emphasize the experience, COVID was for our firm was I'm not saying a blessing, but we got a lot of work from it. People were stuck at home. They weren't spending money on travel. They weren't spending money on, going out to eat as much. And they said, you know what, I really want to invest in my home. I really see the value in this. We want to do that kitchen. We want to tackle that bathroom. We want to redo our basement, whatever it was. And that was eye-opening, and that was really transformative for a lot of our clients and for how they live and people with kids. And, the way that we were able to come in and help them create a better space that brought them more mojo, more joy, and more practicality. It's like, hey, I'm going to have to be working from home now. I need a place for my kid so that I can have my private space. I can actually function. They need a place where they can actually function and like develop and, do e-learning or whatever it was. We had to kind of pivot and go with these new set of challenges and these new design parameters. But yeah, experience was huge.
I think it's interesting too, what came out of that and where we are now. You look at the Spanish flu, and out of that came linoleum and indoor use of subway tile and guest powder rooms, for guests to use a separate bathroom from that of the family. There were huge residential changes. Yeah. And I think that we're seeing residential changes now. And as I look at your work, by the way, I am very frustrated with your website. And I will tell you why. Not because it's not great, because it is. But one of the things I love to do is to pick projects rather, and your projects don't have names. So I'm going to have to just sort of describe them.
Okay.
But I'd rather, because what I like to do is I like to send people. So if you want to follow along, go to the show notes and you'll find a link to Outline Interiors and go to the portfolio. And then you're going to have to find the projects that I'm talking about. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start from the bottom. Okay. Because I think there's a good place to start. One of the things that I've just become infatuated with is the differences in how kitchens have changed. And I think next to outdoor spaces, kitchens have changed more in the last 3 years than any other space in a residential project. And
Yeah.
as I roll up, you've got this one kitchen with it almost looks like a cobalt blue cabinetry, orange stools. Is that a cobalt blue?
It is a cobalt blue. That's actually my kitchen.
That's your kitchen?
Yeah.
I
Right around
love that.
here.
Okay, so I see the beams too. What type of
Yeah.
what is this? Is this
We live in a loft. So my
okay?
husband and I and our two girls, we live in a loft in Fulton Market, which is like the former meatpacking district of Chicago. So the Fulton Market's part of the West Loop. Loft condos and homes and offices are pretty typical over here. Our building used to be, I think it was a bicycle tire factory or something. And then it was converted into live workspace. So there are a couple of like offices here, but yeah, we bought this in 2017 and then gutted it in 2019. And yeah, so our place was this was the property in the Wall Street Journal, as well as HGTV magazine in a holiday issue a few years ago.
I love it. So one of the things that we're going to get into in a couple of other projects of yours is the kitchens. You know, I don't think it's a luxury kitchen anymore if you don't have Kitchen Plus, if you don't have scullery, butler's pantry, dirty kitchen. You don't have to have all of them, but
Right.
I think from a functional standpoint,
Yeah.
you have to have multiples. And with you, what I've noticed too in your work, and I've seen it elsewhere, is this idea of showcasing the bar, and especially for Midwest or South, that's just not something that's been done since like the 70s.
Yeah.
But I love it. How have kitchens changed specifically in yours? I mean, I could go on for days about your kitchen, but between the mixed metals, use of space, flow, it appears like you've really paid close attention not to the triangle anymore, but to zones, which I think is another development, especially in kitchens, that I think has transformed the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think bars don't necessarily have to mean that you're a total booze bag. Like our wet bar is coffee and alcohol. So caffeine to cocktails, and that's what we're seeing with a lot of our clients is they want those dedicated places for entertaining. And so like in our kitchen, we live in a loft. It's very open. We don't have that butler's pantry. We don't have that secondary kitchen. We also don't entertain a ton here. But in our other clients, yeah, if they live in a single family home or if they have a little bit more space or the structure is just a little bit different, we definitely have those kind of back of house areas. But for us, like the zone, we have a large peninsula and we have the coffee, wine, cocktail, wet bar over there. That's where the beverage center is for the Diet Cokes and the Spindrifts and the ice maker and all that stuff. So it gets used every day, not necessarily for alcohol. But when we do have the occasional cocktail party, it's perfect. Like we can set up a nice little bar there. And a lot of our clients are just thinking about all the things that they like in their day-to-day, because if they're working from home, they may not be going out to Starbucks and getting their, morning coffee. They might be investing in, a built-in Miele or a Jura or something like that to have at home to kind of create that experience. I think, you mentioned you think kitchens have changed a lot since the pandemic. I think home office and just the ability for people to have a space where they can work in a dedicated way that doesn't feel like, oh, I just slapped my laptop on the kitchen island, is the other big thing that we've seen.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Absolutely agree. Shuffling up a little bit, there's another kitchen that I have become absolutely infatuated with for a couple of reasons. It is a black sleek kitchen.
Yes.
within what appears to be another loft, but in this case,
Yeah.
it's you have the natural wood which was
Yeah.
left in the beams. This
Mhm.
juxtaposition of black, sleek, modern kitchen against the natural wood, which
Yep.
is then backlit, by windows, and it looks
Yeah.
like there's the original brick there too. So I'm going to assume
Yep.
it may be in the same neighborhood.
It's actually in my building.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we did this project. This project wrapped up right as COVID started, like March 2020, I want to say is when we wrapped that up. But this client had a god awful like white melamine and maple kitchen. Like, I mean, it was bad. Some of the units in this building have not been touched since, I don't know, the 80s or whenever they were converted. And this was one of them. And she wanted dark and moody because, like us, they have really big, tall windows that face east. There's plenty of light. And we said, what about a black on black kitchen? And they were game. And we really leaned into it. We kept everything else light and bright. We changed the floors, painted the walls white. They're on a lower level, so they get the beautiful timber ceiling. We have a corrugated metal. It's not as warm and inviting. Um, so there was already a lot of warmth in kind of the shell of the unit that it could handle that sleek, modern black on black without feeling kind of cold or sterile.
Yeah, and the manner in which you have it juxtaposed against the rough hewn wood beams, I just think it's such a great look, and I imagine it's a great feel between the warm and cool as well.
Yeah, it's a cool vibe.
Yeah,
They left, they moved a couple years ago. And it was so funny when it went on the market, their agent did a video. I don't know how many times he used the word sexy or urban cool, but it was just, I don't know, it was fun to see someone else be excited about it and hear their take on the place, because those were the goals. But yeah, it was a really fun project. I love when clients are trusting, because not a lot of clients are going to say, yeah, I want an all black kitchen. Like, who says that? Very few people. They said it, and we I don't know, we said, okay, let's go for it. And there's a lot of ways to bring lightness and brightness in. It doesn't have to be all dark and depressing. I don't know. We're really happy with how it turned out. I think it's really fun.
is there also for you a sense of, or rather, how does it change your mindset when you're dealing with a loft? If you have any outdoor space, it's going to be minimal,
Mhm.
and you're really limited by the constraints of the space itself, because you're not taking walls out. I mean, some interiors you
Yeah,
can, but you're really not
some,
taking.
but no.
You're not changing the structure.
Mhm.
You're changing the look, the feel, the experience of it. How does that change the way that you feel about the work?
I think it's fun. I think it's just a different challenge. We do a lot of condos and high rises and lofts, and in these types of living spaces, you just have a different set of parameters to work within. You can't be moving drains, you can't be moving toilets. Um, like you said, there are certain walls you can't take down. There might be risers that are running through the building and you can't touch those. That's really just par for the course doing work in downtown Chicago. So my team and I have really just kind of embraced it and kind of leaned into it. We're like, okay, we know we can't move that shower drain, but we know they want a tub. How do we do it? Okay, maybe we have to do a step up. You do a little step up, it might allow us enough distance. I'm going to go into a little, geometry or trigonometry here, whatever. X over Y to get the right slope of the pipe to connect to the main drain. And then you have a little bit of flexibility. That's what we ended up doing in our primary bathroom here, because again, you're in a loft. There's no space in between the various units. You can't move stuff, so you have to get really creative. So we kind of know those shortcuts now. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's what we do all day, every day.
And I imagine too, with a loft, with a fixed space like that, that's where drafting really comes in handy.
Oh yeah. And nothing is straight. let me just clear that up. Nothing is straight. I think like I'm just looking at this wall opposite of where I am right now. We did a glass and metal door partition, and the metal worker was like, you are off like an inch left to right. Like it's crazy. And I was like, gotta make it work. Like loft living.
Yeah, well, loft living is one thing when you move into an old home, when you take on a project that's an
Oh,
old home.
absolutely.
Yeah, the 2x4 was
Absolutely.
actually a 2x4, and there are no straight lines. There are no 90 degrees
No,
anywhere in the house.
no, no. I mean, things are built by humans, right?
Yeah,
Like we're not robots. There's
for
going to
now.
be, for now, yeah, for now it's built by humans. The robots are, in training. But until that happens, things are still going to be like that. So being able to, again, be flexible. It's just like we were talking about earlier, being able to have those conversations with the clients and still steer them back in the way you want it to go. You're their advocate, you're their guide, you're their Sherpa along this journey. And so when you open up a wall and there's a surprise pipe, you have to be the cool, calm leader. I like to go to clients, I like to find out about that problem, come up with a couple solutions, and then go to the client. So it's not just like, well, here's a problem. Like they're not paying me for that.
Last question I have for you, and I'm just curious. In talking to many designers, especially at Design Chicago, it was eye-opening for me. Traditional and transitional was still widely found. And it was kind of like, because Midwest sensibilities don't really go to the modern, go to the advanced design. It's not, they like traditional. They like a comfortable
Yeah.
traditional space. Is that still the case, or are you seeing it sort of advance more? And does Chicago have a developing, burgeoning design style unto itself?
I mean, we don't do as much traditional work. That's just really not. I like to think that I'm at a place where people are looking at my portfolio, looking at my Instagram and saying, okay, I like that, so I'm going to hire her. Not, I'm going to hire her and see if she can do this for me. But there are, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily one style coming out of Chicago or out of the Midwest. I think Chicago is maybe underestimated. I think there is a burgeoning art scene here. There is art, Expo Chicago. There is a creative environment here that is rising. And I think there's a variety of designers here that are working in ultra modern or ultra traditional and really leaning into that and really finding clients that align with that. That's the thing. You got to like, if you find the right client and they vibe with your aesthetic and vice versa, like that's where the magic happens. Midwestern people, I guess my experience with like New York versus Chicago, they are a little bit more conservative. They don't take as many risks. But when you're in New York, you're surrounded by so much variety. Like you can see something that's really modern and you can understand it and then be like, oh, I do like that. I do want that in my home. You don't have as many opportunities here in Chicago, but I think that's still coming.
And that's exciting, and I mention that because, California's style, there was a definite vibe
Mhm.
that emanated from California really in the 1970s. And you could see that permeate into the other styles of design
Yeah,
that gained popularity. New York, that whole Mad Men vibe is more conducive because of high-rise living. But
right.
then you've also got, the boroughs, and each borough has their own kind of vibe, and I think that's cool. What's interesting is, culturally speaking, you're starting to see different areas kind of develop their own personal signature elements, and I think that
Mhm.
that couldn't be cooler.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, New York is interesting too, though, because it's like I worked for David Easton, who was like the ultimate traditionalist, right? But then I also worked for Thomas Johansson, who is like opposite ends of the spectrum. And there would be times where I was in a building where it's like, I worked on a project on this floor for David. Oh, now I'm doing a project for Thomas on this floor. And those two units could not have been more different, you know? So there is still that old school guard going strong in New York. And there are those designers that are leaning into it and doing beautiful work. And then there's those people that are like, I want my home to be ultra sleek and ultra modern. And that's alive and well there too. So I think there's something for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. Love your work. And I am
Thank
appreciative. Thank you for taking the time to do this. This was fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Man, I love this. I have a new sponsor partner on the show that I want to introduce you to if you're not already familiar with them. If you are a specifying designer, architect, landscape architect, or savvy design enthusiast, if you have heard about the quiet luxury movement, this idea of crafting a lifestyle around understated elegance, simplicity, and sophistication, there's more to it than that. And I will add uncomplicated living. Isn't that what we all strive for? I am extremely happy. I'm really thrilled to share a company that embodies all of this, utilizing proprietary technology and a focus on sustainability in their stunningly beautiful products. It's TimberTech. TimberTech is the premium decking company delivering multi-tonal, color blending, and natural wood textures in a product that is virtually indistinguishable from a natural wood product. What does this mean? It means it's everything wood should be. A beautiful look that blends seamlessly with a well-designed space, providing years of enjoyment and performs the way you want it to. No splintering, fading, peeling, cracking, or rotting. I had a wood deck at our Manhattan Beach home, and I gotta tell you, it was exasperating every year doing the random board flip, taking out nails, resetting them, restaining them. It was a complete pain. It was complicated, and I didn't look forward to it. I wish I had TimberTech, because TimberTech is not only uncomplicated, it's beautiful. It comes in over 20 finish options and 9 collections, and 85% of the material is recycled. This is premium decking for your next project. Learn more and specify it for your next design project. TimberTech on the socials or timbertech.com, where you can find a retailer near you, as well as a number of tools to create, design, order samples, and get the expert help you may need. TimberTech is uncomplicated luxury and performs. It's your choice for your next deck project. Thank you, Laura. Amazing. Thank you for taking the time to share your story. Thank you to my partner sponsors, Thermosol, Pacific Sales, TimberTech, Monogram, and Design Hardware for making the show possible. These partners are amazing companies who all have made a concerted effort to support the design community through education, exposure, media, events, and incentives. So check out the show notes for links to each of them so you can see firsthand how they can make your design business thrive and your projects exceed expectations. Thank you for listening, downloading, subscribing, and sharing the show with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for your emails, show, and guest suggestions. Keep them coming. Convo by Design at Outlook.com and on Instagram at Convo by Design with an X. Until the next episode, be well and take today first.